Hey gang, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to go over this Weize 1200 watt pure sine wave inverter. Weize or Weize, I'm not exactly positive how you're supposed to pronounce it, but I will tell you I'm pretty impressed with this little inverter, and you can see the form factor is very, very small and it's very lightweight, but I'll show you all the testing that I've done on it, and I'm actually pretty impressed with it. Now, again, this is a 1200 watt rated continuous running pure sine inverter, and for your information, is model SPA-0211. Now, I looked on Amazon as of this morning, and this is not on Amazon anymore. They have a 2000 watt version, which is priced at 169 bucks. I don't know if this 1200 watt version is going to be added back to Amazon, if they're just out of inventory, but if you go look at it tomorrow, just know that it's not there. I will put a link for the description of this 1200 watt version if I know that they're going to actually have more inventory come in, but I would assume the 2000 watt version is just as good as this, because I do like this inverter. But you're gonna get in the box, these little mounting brackets come with it. They do not come installed. You have to install them themselves. So if you wanna mount this to a wall or to the base of a cabinet or whatever, it does come with these little wings, these aluminum wings that you can mount to, you know, whatever you want. And one of the things I like on the back, it comes with these terminal lug protectors, which a lot of my inverters do not have. So you just pull that off, and of course you're gonna attach your battery cables to that, and you've got this little piece that actually protects those lugs so they're not exposed. I like that feature of this inverter, and not a whole lot of inverters come with these little protectors, which I like. You got two fans on the back, you've got an LCD screen up top, you've got a 2.4 amp USB output here that you can use, and your data port. And that data port is used for this remote that comes with it. And of course it comes with about a 20-foot data cable as well. So you just simply plug it in like an old school telephone to the front of that inverter and then to the back of the remote. And you can use this remote to actually turn on and off the inverter. So you can, say for example, put this remote on a wall in your living room in your RV and have this inverter tucked away underneath your bed or in a cabinet or whatever, and you don't have to actually turn on the inverter from the inverter itself. You just use this remote. And this remote displays the exact same information that is on the LCD on the inverter. So you got your watts, your volts, all that good stuff. You can see directly from this remote. And it also comes with some pretty decent cables. These are 6-gauge cables. A lot of inverters that I get come with like 8 and 10 gauge cables. Some of them are doubled up, but these are actually pretty decent little, about 2 feet worth of battery cables. And I'm gonna use these for the test, but decent little cables, much better than what I am used to on some of these inverters that I get. So actually useful battery cables. Now, of course, I would recommend probably going up to 4-gauge, just because it's going to have less resistance going from the inverter, from the battery. But again, you can use these in a pinch. Very, very decent cables. So that's about it for the inverter. You're gonna have 4 120 volt outputs on the front, and this is a 120 volt rated inverter. Not 110 volt, but 120 volt, and you get 4 AC receptacles up front. And that is about it for this inverter. Let me show you folks the testing that I did on it, and then you can make your own conclusion if you think this is a good inverter or not. So to start off this inverter test, I'm gonna use the remote to actually cut on the inverter, and it's just a simple 1-button on-off. And the battery is sitting at 13.1 volts. Inverter is outputting 119 volts, and we are not pulling anything, obviously, so we are at 0 watts. So this actual remote actually works really well. I've had a couple of inverters where the remote's a little bit finicky. This mimics perfectly what's actually displaying on the screen of the inverter, mimics exactly what you see on this remote screen. So we're gonna start off with a simple load, about 350 watts incandescent light bulb array. And then we're gonna check the voltage, the sine wave, all that good stuff once this is turned on. So there we go. There was no pause and actual power being exuded from the inverter to the lights. And let's check out the readings on this thing. So we're at 120 volts. Let's check the sine wave. perfectly clean sine wave. And we can check on the actual remote that it's showing that my battery's at 12.8 volts. It's still outputting 119 volts, and we are also outputting 370 watts. I'm going to actually plug up my EcoFlow Wave 2 to this because this is about a 5100 BTU. And EcoFlow claims this is a lot more efficient than a standard window AC unit, which is true if you're using a DC power source. When you start using this thing off of AC, it's honestly really not any more efficient than my standard 5000 BTU air conditioning unit. You get the efficiency off these things when you run them off of other EcoFlow products, essentially. So, just to show you folks, the battery is disconnected from the EcoFlow. Here is the battery connector. So I'm gonna be running this air conditioning unit directly off of this inverter powered by AC source. And we'll see how that reacts to it. Plugged in, turn this thing on. Let's crank it down to 60 degrees, which is what it's at right now. And we can watch the power right here. So we're getting close to 600 watts. And that's what happens on these air conditioning units, is that when you first turn them on, that compressor takes a whole lot of power to kick up and get going, which is why you always want to oversize your inverter, because these type of machines use way more than what you think they use at startup. Now it looks like we've kind of peaked. Well, we're still climbing up to 750 watts, still going up. We might even get close to 800 watts. Okay, we've kind of settled, well, 840 watts. So this is gonna go up for a little bit. I'm gonna let it run, and then it'll eventually start to come down once that compressor gets up and running. But right now I'm running that air conditioning unit, and these incandescent lights are still running fine. And let's check out our voltage here. That's pretty impressive, still at 120 volts. And go back and check our sine wave. Awesome. Sine wave, still perfect. Okay, let's let this thing run for about 5 minutes. I'm gonna put a stopwatch on it. And I'm gonna come back in about 5 minutes and check the temperature of this thing and see what this is all sitting at after 5 minutes. All right, so we're coming up on the 5 minute mark here. We just hit it. I'm gonna stop this. I'm gonna unplug these lights so it's not so blinding on this video. And that is going to bring the power down on this thing to 384 watts. That is what the Wave 2 is now using to spit out 60-degree air, in theory. Let's see what it's pulling out now. Not that this is a review on the air conditioning unit, but just curious. Yeah, it's still only at 70.7. Does feel better than what's in here though. Now this inverter also does have a USB 2.4 amp, so you can charge like a phone. So I'll plug this in, and hopefully my phone will take a little bit of a charge. With iPhones, unfortunately, you can't see the amount of wattage, but you can watch it cut on. And it is charging now. So you can run some type of USB charging cord with this inverter. So we're still at 121 volts, actually, running that AC unit. Now, I picked the AC and the lights to show on this test because that's what I typically imagine if you're building like a shed or some type of like emergency type system, you're gonna possibly want to run an air conditioning unit and maybe a light. So with this setup or any 5000 BTU setup, I personally feel like this inverter will do a pretty good job getting you through a quick power outage, or, you know, depending on how much battery juice you have overnight, whatever the case is. It is not hot at all. I mean, I can run a few shots of it, but it's top of it's 91.9. The side of the inverter is 92 degrees. So granted, it's only been running for 5 minutes, but I've had some inverters that get hot really quick, and this one doesn't seem to be getting hot as we speak during this test. Let's see if I can overpower this inverter, because again, right now we're running pretty comfortably at 400 watts. And this is again rated at 1200 running watts. So my favorite, space heater in a 100-degree garage. It's always fun. We'll plug this in. I'm going to start it out on the low setting and work its way up. So, see if we can get that in focus. Come on. Okay, space heater's getting turned on now. That jumps it up to 1300 watts. Oh, there we go, 1400 watts. So, not gonna knock it, it's rated at 1200. As soon as it got over 1200 for a few seconds, you can see what happens. So, let's see if we can get it close to 1200 watts. Let me turn the space heater on again. Again, on the low setting to begin. Thousand, 1100 watts, 1170 watts. So let's just keep it here. Now I will say again, on a lot of my other inverters, if you get anywhere near the rated continuous running watts, the inverter will shut down. It won't get anywhere near the rated output. You usually have to stay, in my experience, about 200 watts or below the rated output. Right now, we've actually climbed up to almost, well, there we're at 1200 watts. Let's see how long it'll hold that. Now we have dropped in voltage quite a bit. We're at 110 volts now, running the full 1200 watts. Check the sine. That sine wave still looks good. Yeah, so it did drop down to 110 volts, which this controller is also showing that. Well, the controller is actually showing 109 volts. This is showing 110 volts. So we're pretty close. But we are comfortably running 1,210 watts. But overall, I gotta say I'm pretty impressed with this Weize inverter. Sine wave is perfect. It's running the rated capacity. I love the form factor. It's very small. It's easy to pack away. It's easy to create some type of cart or stick this in a cabinet or whatever. The remote actually mimics this screen perfectly. I have seen some that don't, and it actually turns off and on the inverter like it's supposed to. I've had some inverters where this remote will not turn on the inverter, which makes this thing useless. Other than the voltage drop when we're pulling 1200 watts, I've got to say this thing works pretty flawlessly from my testing. So folks, there you have it. Here is the Weize 1200 watt pure sine inverter, and I gotta say, I gotta give it a thumbs up, especially with the price point and the form factor of this inverter. It's very small, but it puts out good clean energy, decent voltage when you're not pulling the full 1200 watts, and the remote works perfectly. So I gotta say, it's a pretty decent little inverter. So gang, I hope you enjoyed this little review, and we will see you soon. Take care.